So, I wonder how many of you here are not scientific. Well, nor am I, not one bit. NBC News, my employers of 25 years, didn't care about that, though. They needed someone to go to dangerous places like Gaza to witness humanity's endless cycle of violence. So, no laboratories, but plenty of drugs, as well as 25 to 30 to 50 cigarettes a day, and immeasurable quantities of alcohol meant that any lessons from all of those wars were, at that stage, just disconnected playing cards, missing suits and numbers to give them meaning. So that was where my head was the day this story begins. July 12th, 2005. A neurologist gives me the result of a genetic test saying, there's nothing you can do about this disease, just live your life as well as you can. Huntington's disease had already taken my father and my uncle and was inflicting its combined symptoms of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and schizophrenia onto my older brother, John. HD, as it was known, was genetic, untreatable, and fatal. Okay, so what would you do with that news? Sell your home and travel the world, or curl up in a ball? The landscape for HD was, at that time, completely hopeless. It wasn't even on the radar of pharmaceutical companies, and HD families were so drowned in fear and shame that most wouldn't even mention its name. My mother nursed my father to death for 10 years, but never said the word Huntington's, not once. When my father was a child, the eugenics movement associated Huntington's with witchcraft, and mainstream neurologists back then in the 1930s chose not to counter that nonsense, agreeing that we should be barred from countries or sterilized. The Nazis simply sent people with HD to gas chambers. So, no wonder then that families were desperate to keep HD secret. My own burnt photographs and changed my uncle's death certificate. A character as flawed as me, I guessed, might just deserve HD, but crucially, my brother was full of integrity, compassion, and wisdom, described by one High Court judge as the most brilliant lawyer of his generation. John was my evidence that the stigma was unjust. So, I decided then, with the conviction of the suicide bombers all around me, to go all in and mess HD up. And while that neurologist had said to me that there was nothing I could do about HD, I realized quite soon there was everything I could do about the disease. The problem was going to be finding the time to do it all. I helped word Senator Ted Kennedy's Genetic Information Act and battled globally for freedom of scientific research. In London, the first ever parliamentary representation for HD in any country brought about the largest ever public gathering of Huntington's families. There, you see them there. And under the banner of what I called Hidden No More. That group showed that Huntington's was, in fact, twice as common as had been previously thought, triggering another study in Canada with an even bigger headline, which was that we knew now that the HD expansion, which causes the disease, is in the future bloodline of everyone, but by then, already, 1 in 20 families could have a child with HD. Pope Francis became the first world leader to embrace someone with Huntington's disease. Brenda, a 15-year-old girl from Buenos Aires who we'd brought to meet with him. Pupils at Brenda's school had been told not to touch her, even though you can't catch HD any more than you can catch a broken leg. And then the leader of more than 1 billion Catholics declared globally the 3 words that I had first written on a pub beer mat: Huntington's disease must be hidden no more. As for science, my complete ignorance, ironically, I think probably helped a little bit, because the big question was, how do we find a cure for HD? So my simple question was, okay, so what can we use as a template? Obviously a disease that's already being cured. And you know what? There wasn't one. Nothing, almost nothing had been cured. Not HIV/AIDS, not influenza, not even the common cold. We had learned to manage all of those things with treatments. And in fact, there was no such thing as a single 100% cure for anything. What we needed were 10% treatments to manage HD. And that strategy should apply to every disease. We have to eradicate the counterproductive words cure and incurable from the medical lexicon. Next, I learned that to take any good academic ideas into actual drugs, you have to engage the pharmaceutical industry. And they needed biomarkers, measurements of a disease's progression, which can convince regulators that a drug works. No biomarkers, no therapies. So, with the foresight of a private American foundation called CHGI, we started to produce those biomarkers. That's me in an MRI scanner as part of a 7-year study called Track HD. Blood biomarkers were also an important part of that study, and from that emerged blood biomarkers that would then have been considered science fiction. And now we have 30,000 HD family members who've donated DNA to a central database available free to scientists who are entering into the field. HD has become the vanguard for a future where we will not look at the symptoms of disease to treat them, but the causes. Now, as we dragged HD out of the shadows, revelations have emerged. In Sweden, data showed that people with the HD gene, and we're going to get HD, have an 80% resistance to cancer. Then from Iowa came data saying that those people who are going to develop HD before they get sick have more gray matter than other people. So Italian professor Elena Cattaneo had an explanation for this. By tracing it back 1 billion years, she showed that the gene that causes HD is in fact primarily a good gene benefiting the human race. The problem is that our bodies just simply cannot cope with its expansion right now. She spent about 8 years trying to find proof for that theory, and then she was shown something in the University of Milano's experimental garden. She had been collaborating with another researcher to try and introduce the Huntington gene to a plant, Arabidopsis. Well, the plant with the Huntington gene was 2.5 times the size of the ordinary plant. It grew and lasted and lived for 3 times as long, and sick plants recovered. This is the first time that these images have been shared publicly. They may show why it is that people with the expanded HD gene so often show much greater abilities before they become sick. Can you imagine the irony and the injustice if it turns out to be the case that HD families were so embarrassed and ashamed of their disease for so long, when in fact it's indicative of a greater, higher stage of evolution? But how could any of this be considered good news if it means that more people are going to develop Huntington's? Well, that's where the story comes full circle. The unprecedented global collaboration between researchers and families has taken HD in just 18 years to the brink of a new chapter of medicine. From 0 companies working on the disease when that neurologist told me there was nothing I could do about it, to more than 40 in 2023. Roche alone has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into this genetic therapy being injected into my spine by Professor Ed Wild, a proof of concept that the harmful protein which causes Huntington's disease can be lowered. Hugely important, and the biggest 10% of all, because it was the first. And now I'm on the trial of another drug, but in pill form, PTC 518. And because it's a pill, this could be available to everyone. And as the prevalence, as it will do, increases of the disease, more people are going to need treatments. This is the future of medicine. Embrace it. HD is not witchcraft, and nor is this. So, to finish, let me take you to the mountains between Iran and Iraq in the winter of 1991. 1 million Kurdish refugees were spilling over them, escaping from Saddam's chemical attacks in Erbil. Anyone who didn't get down that mountain before nightfall would almost certainly freeze to death, and the image imprinted on my mind till the day I die was one girl of about 13 on her back, her younger sister, 2 or 3 years old. She had carried that child almost 90 miles. All humans are capable of far more than you can ever believe. We will win this battle with HD, but if we'd left it to health authorities, we would never have even begun our journey. We would have got as far as this little girl from Erbil if her sister had not taken the responsibility of getting her out of Iraq. Every family has an ailment it needs to care about. Don't leave it to governments to fix yours. Thank you very much.